All right, let's talk about one of the most just incredible stories from the entire space race. It's a story all about repeated failure, but also this unbelievable determination. And it's all centered on a series of missions to what we now know is, well, the most dangerous planet in our solar system, Venus. Just look at this. This right here, this is the final space probe to ever land on the planet Venus. I mean, ever. This thing marks the final chapter in what was a long, brutal, and, frankly, pretty heroic series of attempts to conquer our planetary neighbor. So that's the real mystery, isn't it? I mean, what did they find down there? What did the Soviets discover on this incredibly hostile world? And why have we never gone back? After all that effort, why did we just stop? Well, those are the questions we're going to dig into today. You gotta remember, back in the early days of the space race, Venus was a total unknown. There were basically two competing ideas of what it was like. On one side, you had this really hopeful vision, a lush tropical rainforest, maybe even teeming with alien life, kind of like a twin to Earth. But then you had the other theory, championed by folks like Carl Sagan, who thought it was a scorched hellscape caused by a runaway greenhouse effect. But here's the kicker. Nobody actually knew for sure which one was right. You see, unlike Mars, where we could actually see the surface with our telescopes from Earth, Venus was a total mystery. It was just wrapped in this permanent, impenetrable blanket of thick clouds. So the only way to find out the truth? You had to go there. And back in the early 60s, the Soviet Union was absolutely dominating the space race. I mean, Sputnik, the first satellite, Yuri Gagarin, the first human in space, they were on a roll. So Venus, that was the logical next step. For them, this wasn't just about science, it was about bagging another historic first. So their first crack at it was Venera 1, and the ambition here was just wild. We're basically talking about strapping a probe to a ballistic missile and just hoping for the best. And it did get close to Venus, but its systems completely failed on the way. Zero data came back. A total loss. All right, so next up was Venera 2. Now, it was a pretty common strategy back then to launch these missions in pairs, and that's because, well, failure was just so incredibly likely. And sure enough, just like the one before it, Venera 2 also had a complete system failure. So still no data, they were 0 for 2. So while the Soviets are striking out, NASA swoops in. In 1962, their Mariner 2 probe successfully pulls off the first ever flyby of another planet. This was a huge win for the Americans, and you can bet the Soviets were feeling the heat. But the data that Mariner 2 sent back, it was not good. It was actually pretty troubling. It basically confirmed Carl Sagan's hellscape theory. The surface temperature was measured at over 237 degrees Celsius, hot enough to melt lead. And it found a cloud layer that was 80 kilometers thick. So based on this pretty grim picture, NASA basically said, yeah, no thanks, and decided Venus was a dead end. They shifted their focus to Mars. But the Soviets, they were not giving up. In fact, they saw an opportunity here. With the US backing away, Venus was suddenly theirs for the taking. So they went right back to the drawing board and started designing even bigger and tougher probes. So they're building these bigger, tougher spacecraft, right? But what they were about to discover was a challenge nobody had really fully grasped yet. And that was atmospheric pressure. I mean, here on Earth, you think of air as being light, almost weightless. But on Venus, the atmosphere is so incredibly thick and dense, it's more like being at the bottom of the ocean than being in the air. The sheer weight of it is just immense. And, well, the Soviets learned this the hard way. Their next probe, Venera 4, actually made it into the atmosphere. It was sending back data, and then, after about 90 minutes of descent, nothing. It just went silent. And the crazy thing is, it hadn't crashed. It was crushed. Simply crushed like a beer can by an invisible force. By the sheer weight of the planet's atmosphere. Something they hadn't even designed it for. I mean, just think about that. After finding out your probe was literally squeezed into oblivion, you'd think they might give up. But no, they were undeterred. They just went and built the next lander, Venera 7, even stronger. This thing was a tank. The descent module had this super thick steel shell, and inside that, a sphere of solid titanium to protect the instruments. They were absolutely determined to beat this planet. And they did it. Venera 7 became the first spacecraft to successfully land on another planet. A massive achievement. So what did it find when it got there? Well, for starters, a surface temperature of 475 degrees Celsius. To put that in perspective, that's literally as hot as the inside of a wood-fired pizza oven. And it wasn't just the insane heat. The pressure? It measured the atmospheric pressure at a staggering 92 times that of Earth. 92. That's the same kind of crushing force you'd feel if you were a full kilometer deep in the ocean. Just unbelievable. So, let's recap. You're being baked and crushed at the same time. And if that wasn't bad enough, the air itself is trying to dissolve you. Yeah, the atmosphere is filled with sulfuric acid. The clouds aren't made of water vapor, they're made of droplets of the same stuff you'd find in a car battery. What a place. Okay, so at this point, you'd really think they'd call it a day. But no, the next probe, Venera 8, it discovered one last little tantalizing fact. It found that despite those super thick clouds, there was just enough sunlight reaching the surface that you could maybe, just maybe, take a photograph. And just like that, a new goal was set. They were going to be the first to actually see the surface of another world. Now, to pull this off, they needed a whole new strategy. The landers became these absolute 5-ton behemoths. They ditched the parachutes, they would just melt anyway, and instead, they used this huge metal disc to act as an aero brake. And the landing gear? Forget fancy legs. It was basically a circular impact ring, kind of like a giant metal donut with shock absorbers, designed to survive a controlled crash landing. It was brutal, but absolutely brilliant. And you know what? It worked! Get your calendars out because this is a date for the history books. October 22nd, 1975. That is the day Venera 9 landed on Venus, and the day humanity's view of the solar system changed forever. And here it is. This is the one. The very first photograph ever taken from the surface of another planet. Look at it. It's not some beautiful landscape painting, right? But it's so profoundly alien. A field of broken, jagged rocks. This instantly proved that Venus wasn't some smooth, sandy desert. It was a real, complex, geological place. Okay, so fast forward a few years to 1981. Venera 13 lands and sends back this, the first color photograph from Venus. And wow, suddenly the whole landscape just comes alive. You can see this flat, sandy-looking rock, and for the first time, you get this sense of depth, of distance, that makes it all seem so much more real, and at the same time, even more alien. And get this, Venera 13 did more than just take pretty pictures. It actually had a drill that dug into the soil. It found that the ground was basically solidified volcanic ash. And even cooler, it had a microphone. For the first time ever, we could hear the sounds from another world. The sound of the wind howling across that hellish landscape. So when you look back, the legacy of the Venera program is just astounding. The first atmospheric data from another planet, the first successful landing on another planet, the first black and white photo from the surface, the first color photo. Through just sheer, relentless perseverance, the Soviets completely rewrote the book on what we thought we knew about Venus. Which brings us all the way back to that first big question. So why did we stop going? And the answer is, well, it's a mix of things. For one, these missions were incredibly expensive, especially when your lander might only survive for an hour, maybe 2. And then, priorities changed. And of course, ultimately, the Soviet Union itself collapsed. And so, Venus just remains there. Our closest planetary neighbor, yet still one of the solar system's greatest, most unexplored mysteries. So close, and yet so far away.